It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Rick Stone. Since earning his JD from Columbia Law School, Rick Stone has amassed extensive legal expertise dating back to his earliest experience as a law clerk for the Honorable Charles Sifton of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. Rick is a former partner at one of the country's oldest law firms, Cadwalader, Wickersham Taft. He has been lead counsel on several major high-profile, successful consumer and securities class actions. Rick dedicates a substantial portion of time to philanthropy and is involved with numerous local and national charities, such as the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin counties. Currently, Rick serves on the executive committee of the Junior Achievement of the Palm Beaches and teaches economics at Palm Beach Lakes High School as part of its volunteer program that teaches pre-law programs. Rick is an adjunct law professor at Shepherd Broad Law School of Nova Southeastern University. He is president and co-founder of the Palm Beach Investment Research Group, Inc., a membership-based not-for-profit corporation comprising a group of family offices and other investors. I'm so honored to have him come on the show because obviously the biggest news and controversy in dentistry is with SmileDirectClub. I don't think dentists can go a day without talking about it. And the man we're talking to is doing a class action lawsuit. I knew he wouldn't come on the show because no one's ever going to talk about something that's going to trial, but he came on the show. So I'm a dentist. I'm not a lawyer. Thank you, Rick, so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
And I thought it was amazing. So first of all, they're dentists. We're good at geometry and trig and root canals, but not really class action lawsuits. What are you actually doing? You've recently filed class action on behalf of orthodontists at SmileDirectClub. What does that actually mean?
So, Howard, I'm going to be very careful about what I say on lawyer, in part because SmileDirect has been very aggressive, in my opinion, in defending their interests, and I don't want to be on the other side of one of those actions. So, first, let me say what a class action is. A class action is a litigation involving a group of people who suffer a similar injury. So in our case, we have two groups of people. We have orthodontists and dental providers of orthodontic care, and we have consumers who have used the SmileDirect aligner system. So we have two groups of people who comprise two separate classes within that class action.
So it's orthodontist and patients.
Correct.
And so what is the goal of this? What is the goal?
The goal of every class action is to recover money for the injured parties in that case, and occasionally to cause changes in business practices to cause them to comply with what we believe are applicable regulations and rules.
And there's a couple of law firms on this. There's one in Nashville. That's it. So you're working with two other law firms. You're in Florida. One's in Atlanta and one's in Nashville.
One's in Birmingham, the Spotswood Law Firm, which is an excellent plaintiff's firm in Birmingham, and then in Nashville, working with the Bone Law Firm, which is a litigation firm that does both plaintiffs and defendants work in Nashville. They're effectively our local counsel, but working on the case in Nashville.
Some would say, and I think it's a fair game, that this is really all about the old timers protecting the way it always was and stifling creative innovation. How do you see it as, protecting the way it was versus innovation to a new way of teledentistry that's faster or lower cost?
Our case has nothing to do with defending the status quo or with opposing innovation or challenge. Our case has to do with whether or not SmileDirect is correctly representing and completely representing the efficacy of their product, and whether or not, by not doing so, as we allege in the complaint, they are injuring customers and competitors, orthodontists and dentists, who provide a different type of level of service in connection with orthodontics.
So where are we at in this process? Are we just at the place where you just started this, filed it? Where is this at in its journey?
Well, we're at the beginning of the case, but the beginning of the case was a journey because we spoke with dozens of orthodontists, dozens of patients, and gathered our factual information from those conversations, as well as public documents filed by SmileDirect, including the registration statement, the document that they use to become a public company a few weeks ago.
The ADA, I always post the updates on this, but now, or I should say the ADA. Well, do you look for the American Dental Association and the American Association of Orthodontists out of St. Louis? Or these, you have two law firms where you have Birmingham and Asheville. Is this something that that you want to do with the ADA and the orthodontists, or is it separate, or
it's completely separate. We have no relationship, direct or indirect, with the ADA or the American Association of Orthodontists. Have we spoken with some dentists or orthodontists who are members of those organizations? We have, but we don't represent the ADA or AAO interests in any way, shape, or form.
And so who would be your customer? Is the orthodontist paying you to go forward, or
I'm sorry. Cases like this are done on a contingency. So the lawyers effectively front the expenses and don't get paid for their legal time, and there's very substantial legal time in a case like this, unless and until they win the case.
And what do you think? What do you think your average orthodontist and dentist? I mean, there's 211,000 Americans who have a license to practice dentistry. What do you think they don't know about this case and everything that that you do?
I think they probably don't know a lot about the case. I think they probably know a lot about SmileDirect and have opinions about SmileDirect and the efficacy of that product. I don't think they know a lot about the case, and that's part of the reason I came on, because I want to educate them and I want to communicate with them. We now have a pending case pretty much every day for the past 2 weeks since we filed the case. I've received phone calls, and my co-counsel have received phone calls from professors at various universities who teach dentistry and orthodontics, dentists in various locations, customers who claim they have injury from SmileDirect. So we've had a steady communication, and we really want that to continue. We want to hear what the orthodontic community thinks and what their experience has been and what the patient experience has been with SmileDirect. That's going to help us pursue this case effectively and correctly.
Okay, so to all those listening, what do you want them to do if they just heard you say that and they have a patient that is not happy, or they're not happy? What would they do next?
As crazy as it may seem, I'm going to give you my email address. You can communicate that way.
Okay.
I have a caveat. I still use AOL. You probably think that's very old-fashioned thinking that, but I have been a professor at various law schools for more than a decade, and I have students from many years ago who've left the country, who move around, and they can always communicate with me with that email. They come into Florida and they email me, and there it is. So my email is rstoneesq@aol.com. rstoneesq@aol.com.
Okay, I'm sorry, but what is the difference between, sometimes a lawyer at the end of his name will say JD, and in your case, it's ESQ for Esquire. What is the difference between JD and Esquire?
JD stands for Juris Doctor, and that's the degree you get when you go to a 3-year law school in the United States. So I don't think it's the custom for people to sign letters, so-and-so JD. ESQ is a term that's applied to all lawyers in the United States and in Europe, Esquire, ESQ.
So the best way to contact you would be your email, rstoneesq for Esquire @aol.com.
Correct.
And what are you looking for? What would be the sweet spot? Like, what would you like to receive? Is it more? Yeah.
I would like to hear people's experience with SmileDirect, orthodontist and dentist experience with the product, happy or unhappy, satisfied or unsatisfied, fixing a problem or not fixing a problem, and then the customer experience as well. As I've said, we've had hundreds of calls in total, and there are thousands of comments on the internet, on the Better Business Bureau website, on Facebook, and on other websites where people are expressing their opinion with respect to the product, we want to make sure that we hear all the members of the class and what they have to say.
And is this the fact that you're in Florida and Birmingham and Nashville? Was that a United States statement? I mean, what if they're in Canada or England or the internet's very international?
I'm happy to speak to them. Those non-U.S. people are not included in our case as of now.
So it's purely a United States lawsuit.
Correct.
Yeah, and now for you to take this on a contingency. You have to have some faith in it. I mean, you wouldn't just throw money down the toilet. Why would you take on a case of this size contingent?
I'm going to stick to what we've said in the complaint. I think the complaint, it's 40 pages or so with exhibits, lays out a strong case with respect to misrepresentations made by SmileDirect, which have changed over time with respect to the description of their product and its efficacy, and lays out a strong case with respect to whether or not they have obtained proper FDA approval, not of the product itself, but of their marketing and distribution of that product. So I stick with what we say in the complaint. I'm not going to add to that, but I believe that we have laid out a very strong case in that regard.
Their IPO wasn't smooth at all either. I mean, they've seems like they've been having that was some people say their IPO was a disaster. What were your thoughts on that?
I would say it was a disaster squared. To my knowledge, it was the worst performing IPO of the last decade at least. I think the stock closed at 11 and change today, which would mean it was down more than 50% in 3 weeks or so from the IPO price.
And why do you think that was? I mean, where do you think they went wrong in the IPO?
So this is pure speculation. I'm not a market guru. I do invest, and I have people who I invest with. So what I'm saying is not fact. It's speculation and opinion on my part. I think that the market is questioning the efficacy of the business model and whether or not this business model can stand up to regulatory and litigation scrutiny over the long period of time.
It's going to be interesting. Does it also make you have worries about teledentistry in general? I mean, there's a lot of people thinking teledentistry is a neat thing. And then you have AI around the corner. I mean, between teledentistry and artificial intelligence, will they still need dentists and doctors in the future?
I'm not an expert on teledentistry. Having just had a knee replacement, I'm pretty sure they'll need doctors in the future because doing that at home won't work. And I'm sure there's a role for using Skype and communication on the internet to facilitate communication between doctors and patients and to address certain issues, especially in places where doctors don't exist. But I'm not expert enough on teledentistry to tell you what I think the future will be. Because
a lot of Wall Street people describe SmileDirect business as a teledentistry play. You know, it's one of their big buzzwords. You know that.
I think that SmileDirect describes its business as teledentistry, and its underwriter J.P. Morgan in their report of 2 or 3 days ago describes it as teledentistry. I think there are other people who say that it's not teledentistry, that it doesn't meet the industry standard definition of teledentistry.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody I know from my college that went to law school said that after they graduate from law school, they'll never think the same way again. So I imagine all these words mean something totally different to you than I'd say a normal person, right?
I would agree that lawyers are very careful about the words they use. Yes.
Yeah. So do you think this could be? I mean, if they had a really bad IPO, their stock's down. The last thing they need is a huge class action lawsuit. Do you think this could be, the final straw for them?
Well, I don't have an opinion on that. They have a lot of litigation. They have our case, and they have separately securities class action, or more than one, filed against them related to that initial public offering and representations in their prospectus. So they have a big litigation docket right now, and in the not too distant future, we will have a good picture on how those cases will proceed.
A lot of people in the press, it's always SmileDirectClub and Invisalign in the same paragraph. I mean, those are the two big ortho companies, publicly traded. Is there really any connection with SmileDirectClub and Invisalign in your lawsuit or the class action or just in general? Or do they just have to be two players in the same space?
There's no connection. We don't work for Invisalign directly or indirectly. We haven't even communicated with him in connection with the case. I don't think they're the same business model at all, though. Invisalign, to my knowledge, one of my children has had it, uses the orthodontist on a regular and continuous basis to adjust the treatment, to space the teeth correctly using manual tools. And there's a continuing interaction with the orthodontist directly over the course of using the aligners. So I think it's a different business model than the SmileDirect business model.
And so it seems like they've had less lawsuits of that matter, correct? I mean, Invisalign, it doesn't seem to be as controversial.
I'm unaware of them having had any lawsuits except the lawsuit that they had with SmileDirect.
Exactly. So can you tell us what that was all about, the lawsuit between SmileDirect and Invisalign?
I'm not completely up to speed on that. That was resolved prior to my litigation. So I'm not comfortable speaking about it because I just don't know.
Yeah. So I know you're, I know this is a trial. Most people, they always say, well, I can't speak on this. But mostly you came on to you'd like to get more information from dentists to contact you via email. Is there anything else you can talk about or describe without getting yourself in trouble?
Well, that's important not to get yourself in trouble. Not really. I think this is an important issue. This is a consumer product that's used by hundreds of thousands of people over time. If the business model succeeds, millions of people, and who it's appropriate for and how it works, and whether there are people that shouldn't be using the product, and whether it is correctly described to the disadvantage or advantage of SmileDirect versus orthodontist are important issues. So we want to hear people's experience, good or bad, and orthodontics experience, people who've had patients who've come in and said it worked fine for me or it didn't work fine for me. We need to hear from those people. They're members of our class, and we think this is a good way for us to communicate with them so that they can contact us in their discretion.
It's funny because when orthodontists, have been worried that this is gonna, be the end of their demise or put them out of business or whatever. I say, well, yeah, it's gonna put you out of business because when you go to work, you don't do anything, and they just look confused. Are you kidding me? I work my butt off all day long and I go home exhausted. And I said, there you go. It's not gonna be. That's what you do. So these class action lawsuits, I mean, I'm a dentist. I read about root canals, not class actions, but I was looking up and these things go back to the 13th century in England. And then they said they talk about the largest class action lawsuit was with Dow Corning. So is class action lawsuits, is that something that's has been since the 13th century, been here 600 years, always will be? Are they getting bigger? Are they used more or less? What's the status of class action lawsuits today?
Yeah, I would say I'm not so familiar with them being used in the 1300s. I think there were probably 800,000 people in England in those days. And we have 330 million in the U.S. So it's a good mechanism to join people who have a common interest and reduce overall litigation costs and court time and expense. We can't have 100,000 cases, but we can have one case that involves 100,000 people. So I think used correctly, subject to the supervision of a federal court judge, which our case is, and most cases are in federal court, it works well. And so I think it is a good and effective mechanism, although most European countries today do not have that mechanism. So it is not uniquely American, but it is largely American.
Yeah, this article, the 5 biggest class action settlements verdicts ever. Number 1, the tobacco in 1998. Number 2, Enron. 3, WorldCom. 4, Exxon Valdez. 5, Dow Corning breast implant litigation. This is Dentistry Uncensored, and now I want to ask the controversial things. A lot of people, obviously, I don't know who America doesn't like more, going to the dentist or lawyers. Are there more dentist jokes or lawyer jokes out there? I'm not sure. I'm not sure who is lower on this totem pole in fear or whatever. But what is your letter grade of the legal system in the United States? I mean, I would give my dentist a solid A. I really would. I think they try hard. They're doing good. They go home exhausted. They're wearing so many hats. There is no way I would not give my dentist an A. What would you give your lawyers?
Tough question. I'm an academic because I teach law school, so I have a certain perspective, and then I'm a lawyer who actively practices, and I'm a business person. I think that many class actions are very important and serve an important function because the Securities and Exchange Commission and the FTC and other regulatory agencies just can't do it on their own. So you took the Enron case. I'm very familiar with that. I was involved in that. Quite a massive fraud, a $60 billion loss in equity value. Important that someone went after the people who were liable for that to get back money for the institutions and individuals at stake. Dow Corning involving breast implants, a lot of physical injury. Important that someone went after them and recovered the money. And on the other hand, in all honesty, there are some class actions which are not significant and are challenging fairly insignificant malconduct. And wind up getting limited or very little relief for the class. And I think there you do have consumer complaints or a perspective that the case might not have been worth it. Personally, I stay away from those cases, but there is a certain element of the legal community that does involve themselves in those type of cases.
You're professor at Nova Southeastern University, Shepherd Broad College of Law. Nova Southeastern University also has a dental school.
Yes.
If you go get an MBA program, one of the course curriculum is business law. I know my dentist, we were too busy taking geometry and calculus. We didn't get any business law. You're talking to a lot of dentists right now. If you had to put your business law hat on to a bunch of dentists, what advice would you give them as pertaining to their practice of dentistry and the law?
I actually taught the business law course right now at FAU, Florida Atlantic University, and I taught business law and securities law at Nova Southeastern. You know, I have a different perspective from you. My experience with dentists, and I'm friends with quite a few, is that they are fairly astute business people. They have a lot of practice software. They keep abreast of new developments, and they've moved their practices forward over time from cavities to sophisticated cosmetic dentistry procedures and related procedures that the marketplace demands. So I think it's a profession where people have done a good job in self-innovation.
Yeah. So do you is there any advice you give to the young kids, though, that are just coming out of school that will be setting up a dental office to keep them out of legal trouble or legal? Yeah.
I think most dentists understand the legal risks of their business and have form agreements and the like that limit it as best as it can. I'm not an expert in that arena, though.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you can talk about or want to talk about? Or is there any questions you wish I asked that I didn't ask?
No, I think we've covered it. As I said, my purpose of being on the show was not to talk too much about the merits of the case, to stick to the complaint. We're pleased and feel it's well-researched, well thought out. It's a result of a lot of due diligence and conversations.
So walk me through the post.
We do want to hear from people on an ongoing basis.
Well, tell me exactly how to say it. Should I say Rick Stone is the or do you want to? Yeah. Tell me how I should put this out. Rick Stone is the attorney.
One of the attorneys
is one of the attorneys on the
SmileDirect class action.
So Rick Stone Esquire is one of the attorneys on the should I say recently filed class action or just class action?
That's fine. Recently filed is fine.
Okay, on the recently filed class action on behalf of orthodontists against SmileDirectClub
and consumers.
And consumers.
Yes.
And if you have any, tell me what to write. If you have any information.
Exactly. If you want to communicate with us about your experience, that is the email address to do that at.
Okay, so I have Rick Stone Esquire is one of the attorneys on the recently filed class action on behalf of orthodontists and consumers against SmileDirectClub. If you have any information and want to communicate your experience, please email Rick Stone at rstoneesq@aol.com.
Perfect.
You know, I knew when I was reading this in the news, I knew when I sent you an email, I said, well, I'm just wasting my time. There's no way he's going to come on this show and all that kind of stuff. I didn't think about that. That was the reason. And so I'm glad that's a reason. And is the information flowing in good now, or?
Yes, we receive calls every day. Orthodontists, dentists, and consumers. So people are interested. They want to hear what other people's experience were. Sometimes they call us for advice, which we can't give. But yes, that's very helpful for us to build up a foundation of additional knowledge with respect to the product and its efficacy.
Is there a website to go to, or just stay with email?
There will be. It's just not up yet because the case is, as you pointed out, new. But there will be a website.
Well, Rick, and
I will email that to you, and I will email that information to you.
Okay, and like I say, I was looking forward to this podcast at the end of the day so bad, just because I was so curious why you came on the show, and I feel like Albert Einstein that I finally figured it out, because nobody talks about a case, and you came on the show. But hey, thank you so much for doing this. I guess at the end, my opine on this is that what I believe in more than anything is just checks and balances. Unchecked power. Absolute power leads to absolute corruption. And even Abraham Lincoln said, if you want to test someone's character, just give them absolute power. And, it usually makes a monster. And if there's one thing I will never budge on, is that humans do better with transparency and checks and balance. When nobody knows what you're doing in a room and you can do anything, it's just trouble. And I just think humans do so much better when other people are aware of what they're doing, and when someone has the ability to come up and tap you on the shoulder and say, you quit doing that. So right around, I just love the system. I love the solid institutions. I love it when government's broken up into different branches of checks and balances. I love the transparency. So you're just part of the competitive landscape to try to keep everybody honest and being good. And so thank you for what you're doing, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.